This one recording. It's 7 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started because we do have a lot to cover tonight. Hope others join in, and I'm sure that they will. Just a reminder that as you see on the screen, we are on week 8, and this is exactly the halfway mark, Amy. You're halfway there, and so this is a very busy week. We had our town hall last night, and Dr. Lamb did an excellent job just, introducing the APTEL and the expectations for that. And we're going to start breaking it down today into the smaller parts so that you can begin working on it. We will have our Zoom session on Thursday night, and for the most part, we will not be discussing the APTEL. That will be tonight, but Dr. Lamb's going to go back and we'll assist him as needed, but he's going to go back and review the expectations for your folio and where you should be at this point, and we're going to really have to start pushing that so that doesn't, that you're not bogged down with all that at the very end of the semester. So that will be our main focus on Thursday night, and then anything else that Dr. Revis or the other instructors and Dr. Lamb deems that we need to talk about. As you see on the screen, under assignments, your case study 1 is the only thing that is scheduled for you to have to complete and turn into your instructors by the end of this week. Some of those have already started coming in. So just as a reminder, make sure that you're following the directions on that. Check your videos and make sure that the links do work when you send them to Dr. Revis and me. And we go back through that. And some of you'll get quick feedback on it, because now once a group, you send the video in and we know who's in that group, we look at the video one time. We don't have to look at the video 4 more times that we've already seen, but we do look at your reflections and the narrative work that you've done. So once we've looked at the video one time, you can get quick feedback on that. So don't think that just because you're getting quick feedback that they're not looking at that. We will have already looked at the video if that's the case. I want you to notice that what you see now for week 8, you no longer see the color red, do you? You know why? That was the APSO, and the APSO is, for the most part, the APSO is over with. You will begin seeing green, and when you see green, every bit of that is letting you know that that's dealing specifically with the APTEL, which was introduced last night and we're going to talk about again tonight. Dr. Revis, I think out of the 27 students in my 2 classes, I have approved Turnitin for 25 of the 27. So I don't know where it is with you, but the ones that are out there, make sure that you are, that you're keeping up, going ahead, getting that behind you, because the work ahead of you, you need to be able to start focusing on that. So let's go ahead and get that behind you. I will remind just a very, very handful, not many at all. You need to go back into Blackboard and you need to look at if I'm missing any assignments. I've sent out specific information to you or emails to you saying the following is missing or whatever. I'm not doing that anymore now with the APSO. That's your responsibility. And if you haven't gotten it in, that's your grade. Dr. Revis, you have any comments on that for your group?
I've got all but a couple people who've already done Turnitin and are ready to upload into TaskStream. And don't forget that when you get your feedback from TaskStream, to take a screenshot of your final evaluation and place that into a Dropbox in your Blackboard course shell.
And that is, thank you for reminding me of that. There are just not many of you, but there's a 3 or 4 of you that I know you've gotten your grade back from TaskStream already, but you haven't done that last step, and that is the screenshot, submitting it that is a grade. That is Dr. Revison, that is our clue that you've completed it, that everything is over with. I've gone into task stream and I know you've got a grade because I can see it in task stream, but you haven't done that part for your instructor. So just make sure that you take that last step if you haven't done that. I want to show you week 9 as well while we're here. Let me go over. If you see week 9 next week, notice no Zoom session spring break. Now, no Zoom session spring break doesn't mean that you can go on vacation, that you take that cruise or whatever. Remember that and I told a story. There is red there. You're still required to continue working, and that is the whole purpose in what we're going to be driving tonight and then on Thursday night, is so that you will have plenty to keep you occupied, while you're on spring break as well. And what you see in red, and I apologize, I forgot that was there. That's just a reminder that at this point, that's the drop dead last of what we should be seeing of anybody with the APSL at that point. So that's, we would love to see it completed this week, but this is the drop dead right here, unless there's something that you have communicated with Dr. Revis and me personally about, but you should be working at this point. Make sure you're doing your readings and you're keeping up with those things as well. Let me see. We've talked about the case study. Dr. Revis, I'm going to turn it over to you at this time. I'm going to stop sharing and let you take it over. Dr. Revis's topic tonight, the role of the principal in professional development, will align itself exactly with a lot of what we're going to be talking about with the development of the APTEL. So I've asked her if she would precede the conversations that Dr. Lamb and I will have with you about the specific work with the APTEL later on. So I'm going to stop sharing, Dr. Revis, and turn it over to you.
Okay. All right, I'm having a hard time finding it. Well, here we go. Okay, can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, we can.
Okay. What I want to talk a little bit about tonight is the role of the principal and teacher professional development. You have heard all of us talk about the importance of highly effective instruction in your classroom, and I wanted to give you, or start out this conversation about teacher professional development, giving you a little bit of the research behind the power of effective instruction. A lot of people like to have the research, so that's one reason I'm doing this. Mike Schmoker, in his book called Results Now, proposed that the single greatest determinant of learning is not socioeconomic factors or funding levels, which we tend to talk a lot about in public education. It is instruction. So let me show you some numbers here, and these are some studies that have been pulled together by Marzano in 2003. You know, Marzano has written books like What Works in Classrooms. This is from his book entitled What Works in Schools. So what we're looking at here is the impact of effective instruction and the impact of effective schools. Now, for the purpose of our discussion tonight, we're going to define effective schools as those schools that consistently are exceeding expected growth. And we're going to define effective instruction as those teachers who are consistently exceeding expected growth in their classrooms. So what we have here is a student scoring at the 50th percentile and spends 2 years, first of all, in a least effective school, again, a school not meeting growth, with a least effective teacher, one not meeting growth. And at the end of 2 years, the student will drop to the 3rd percentile. Now, I just believe this is devastating for a child. To come in at the 50th percentile and have that situation 2 years later regress down to the 3rd percentile. Well, let's see what happens in a least effective school with a most effective teacher, being a teacher consistently exceeding expected growth. Here, the student will leave after 2 years at the 63rd percentile. So you can see that value added there with that highly effective teacher. Putting the best factors together, which is what we all strive for, is that student being and attending a most effective school, a school consistently exceeding growth, with a most effective teacher. The student leaves after 2 years scoring at the 96th percentile. And to me, this is life-changing. This is why we do what we do. And this is why we're on that quest of becoming an effective school with effective teachers in every classroom. Goodwin published a book called Simply Better, and it's a great read. If you've never read it, I would recommend this book. I do have it in my reference section. But I've talked about this before. One of the most important jobs of a principal is to replicate those pockets of highly effective teaching throughout your classrooms, throughout the building. And Goodwin proposes that we do that by visiting classrooms, observing teachers, but not only just visiting and observing, giving that formative feedback to teachers, coaching teachers to higher levels of performance, evaluating their performance, and giving them an accurate picture of their evaluation, supporting their professional development and professional growth, and establishing that collaborative culture, which we know about from our work that we did with PLCs. Now let's talk a little bit about effective professional development. And this comes from a study by Joyce and Showers. Actually, they did their first study, I think, in the late 1980s. But this has been replicated. And let's see what this looks like. Excuse me. I'm going the wrong way. Uh-oh. Sorry, I lost it. I don't know how I got all the way there.
Okay, but you found it.
There we go. All right, in professional development, if all the presenter does is just explain the content, what it is and why it's important and how to teach it, which is the traditional set and get, look at what happens with the knowledge level. Only about 10% of the participants will have any kind of understanding of the content. The skill attainment, an average of 5% of the teachers will be able to demonstrate proficiency in any of the instructional practices presented in that professional development. Let's get over to the heart of the matter with professional development, and that's the transfer to practice. 0% of the teachers can or will be able to regularly implement these instructional practices into their classroom. So this should be a word to the wise here when you're developing your professional development plan. It can't just be a one-shot deal, set and get. Let's say that the presenter does implement and model instructional practices throughout the presentation. Here our knowledge level goes up 30%, our skill attainment 20%, but still the transfer to practice is 0. Well, what if the participants are allowed to practice during that professional development the strategies? Then the knowledge base goes up to 60%, our skill attainment 60%, and finally we start seeing it creep up a little bit, transfer into practice about 5% of the teachers. But when we add the last element, participants receiving that ongoing coaching and support when they return to the classroom, look what happens across the board. And finally, look what happens to the transfer to practice. So all of these elements I propose need to be in your professional development plan, but most specifically, without that coaching and ongoing support when they are learning and practicing and implementing these new instructional strategies, if we don't do that, very few teachers will hang with it and will feel comfortable doing it. So some really good research about professional development. Linda Darling Hammond et al. Believes, and their research talks about design elements for effective professional development. And they propose that professional development needs to be content focused. Even if you're talking about instructional practices, that needs to be put in content very quickly for teachers, particularly middle and high school teachers. That professional development needs, again, like the research I just showed you, we have to have active learning on the part of the participants. There has to be collaboration time built in, not only during the professional development session, but afterwards in your PLCs. The use of models and modeling, both during the professional development and as follow-up. Coaching and expert support, and again, feedback and reflection throughout sustained duration. Most of the time in effective schools, we see professional development initiatives be throughout the year and across multiple years. And if you think about it, if you look at the Marzano's 9 high yield practices or strategies, first of all, I highly believe in those. And I believe if a school would really embrace those and teachers become really strong in implementing those practices in their classroom, I believe those things would make a difference in student achievement. I know for a fact it will. But you can't just expect teachers after one session of explaining and practicing to be able to feel comfortable with all those 9 elements. That kind of professional development may take you across multiple years. Again, making sure you're giving that coaching and feedback and support. So let's talk a moment about data sources that you have used and will use in your APTEL. The data sources that you predominantly use in your APSL came from your EOCs and EOG performance data and EVOS data. But with your APTEL, you're going to look at the North Carolina Teaching Conditions Survey and really delve into the constructs of teacher leadership and professional development. Now I'm going to click on this. I tried it about an hour ago, and actually the website was acting funky, and I wanted to show you one more. It won't let me do it. It won't even let me pull results tonight, and I don't know what's going on here with the website. But Dr. Lim last night showed you how to pull the graph that would compare how all schools in North Carolina did, how your school district performed on these different teacher opinion surveys, how your school performed, and how similar schools. If you're an elementary school, it would give you a comparison of how all elementary schools in North Carolina performed. There's another report you can pull in there, and I just encourage you to go on there and just try to search for some of these reports. It's when you get to your individual school. It's an individual school report that you can pull up, and you can actually see how teachers answered questions on the 2014, 16, and 18 Teacher Working Conditions Survey. So it gives you a historical picture of maybe your trends in your data to see if you're making improvement in any of these constructs. I also want to point out tools. I actually have used these tools with principals, and principals have used those with their school improvement teams. Great templates and great tools here for helping you perform a data analysis on your teacher working conditions survey. There's a facilitator's guide, presentation, a PowerPoint, a participants packet filled with all kinds of worksheets that you can work on together to really drill down into some of the elements of the teacher working conditions survey. So I would encourage you to look at some of those things, particularly when those results start coming in from the 2020 survey, get with your principal and encourage him or her to let you facilitate this process of diving in to the teacher working conditions surveys.
And
Now,
Dr. Revis, just remind
yes.
them, when Dr. Lamb showed you the survey, when he went into the survey, remember there were three tabs, and he clicked on the first one, and that was one with all the color. The middle one was the one that we emphasized that you probably need to focus on more with the work that you're doing. But what Dr. Revis has said, you need to get fully embrace it. Those of you in North Carolina, especially, and in South Carolina, whatever you use, because you will be using this consistently throughout the rest of the program.
And I did find an advanced ed survey, the staff survey. The advanced ed survey has 5 constructs. And if you're using this for accrediting purposes in North Carolina, you're probably only going to do this, administer this survey every 3 years, but definitely every 5 years when you get ready for your accreditation. But the construct that you would look at there would be teaching and assessing for learning. And there are almost about 20 questions there that you can look at. And you should be able to get results from your school and your district, but only compared to national norms. But someone in your school and district has this information.
And Dr. Revis, I think that, if I'm not mistaken, I think that I know it's every 5 years, but I think that they do have to do something interim along the way. They don't wait just to 5 years. They kind of put their fingers on the pulse about midway on this as well.
I think you're correct. And anyway, those are 2 good surveys that you can use as well to look at data. So here's a little summary, if you will, from the research and some of my information, personal information. You have to make data-driven decisions about your teacher professional development. You are data rich. The hardest thing is finding the time to go through and do data analysis with all this information and to narrow your focus. But you have to also ensure that there's adequate time during your teacher work days, during planning periods to do that follow-up, and you have resources available for teachers. Ensure that your professional development incorporates those elements from Linda Darling-Hammond's research of high-quality professional development. Now, this is a Dr. Revis bullet here. Attend and participate in all full group sessions when you become that instructional leader of your school. I can't say enough about this. When you don't attend your professional development, it sends the message to the teachers that it's not important to you. Secondly, if you don't attend, how are you going to provide feedback, to coach, to have discussions and conversations with teachers? You've got to attend, and not only attend, but I underscore the verb participate. You can't be there doing your emails in the back of the room. You need to participate with your teachers. That's how you learn, and it's all learning together. So enough of that. Provide that necessary follow-up support in your schools. If you have literacy coaches or instructional coaches, be sure they're working side by side with teachers as they're implementing the new strategies in practice, and then monitor implementation. That is your job as a school leader, to monitor the implementation of those practices. And then lastly, which is something we don't do very well, is evaluate the effectiveness of professional development. And I didn't talk about the research here, but Thomas Guskey has done a lot of work on evaluating professional development. And so you can look at some of his work as well. So that's all I have. And here are the references. Of course, you're free to use any of those references in any of the work that you do. Most of those can be accessed through the Dover Library if you need be. And that's all I have. Dr. Stedman, do we have any questions?
Okay, and if you'll stop share, then I can pull my stuff back up while they're.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. And some questions may come along, Dr. Revis, as we are, as we are
okay.
moving along with with some of the other things as well that we're going to be talking about. I want to pull up, before I go into, I want to pull up the Aptell template and materials in Blackboard. It's important that you know what's in this section. We're going to be specifically looking tonight at the Aptell template and the Aptell helpful hints. But then Dr. Lamb, last night, he shared with you this document, the MTSS for Teachers, and it's in there. And as a reminder, we don't need to see, we want to see your own individual work, your creativity, but all of these are helpful aids that you can use to get your work done. Marzano, high yield strategies, all of those documents are in there. These are the competencies, again, that you will, all of the competencies, but then it gives you where you can go back and find whatever you need to finish the 9 that you will need to finish for the Aptell with this evidence. These are some presentations that were made last semester by other 601 staff members that we felt like were worthy of keeping. So these are resources as you're looking at different ways of how do you get information, how do you monitor what's going on in classrooms. These are just some examples of some things that others have shared that you can look at your leisure and decide, you know, whether you want to use them or not. And then we've put your Dover Library link in here as well, so you have quick access to it. Now, this is where I want to really focus tonight, because we're going to be talking specifically in just a few minutes about having to do a needs assessment. When you go in here, click on this. Now, you're going to find that it has information in there that tells you to join this and join that. Don't pay attention to that. Just look at the documented work in there, and there's a video, and the video gives a great explanation of what a needs assessment is, and it ties into exactly what Dr. Lamb and I are going to be talking about and sharing with you tonight. These next 5 documents, I'm going to refer back to them, but you need to click on them, and these are good starters for you, because when we talk about task 1 and prompt 1 tonight, these align. Number 1 that we're going to be talking about aligns with this document here. Number 2 aligns with this document. Number 3 with this document. Number 4 with this document, and number 5 with this document. So we've given you some good stuff to help you get started on what, and this is all research-based information to help you get started. So I wanted you to see that so that you know that we've provided you with some valuable resources. And again, Dr. Lamb presented this showed you this last night. But again, evidence to the Aptell, the Analysis and Action Plan for Teacher Empowerment and Leadership. It's called an action plan, but it's actually you're working on a staff development plan to improve overall staff development for your school. Evidence 2 is no different than what you did with evidence 1, the Aptell, remembering that there are 4 tasks with this evidence versus 5 tasks with the Aptell that you've just completed. Again, the cover page, your name here, that's the only thing you do, and then it's the Aptell. The school profile that you've already done, unless you need to edit it, the school profile will follow that first page, that cover page, and it'll be the same school profile unless you see a need to edit it for this task. And then we get into task 1. Let's look specifically at what it's telling you to do. It's talking about you, the candidate, will conduct a literature review. Reflect, and you've already done that twice in the Aptell, so this should be there. You know what to do. Reflecting various teacher empowerment and leadership best practices from reputable scholarly sources. The review should include a bibliography, no different than what you've already done. The candidate will develop a visual checklist of best practices for teacher empowerment and leadership. This observation instrument should emphasize key observable demonstrations of best practices one might expect to see in a successful 21st century school. And then these are the broad areas it's covering. And I want you to come on down under the instructions, because that's where we need to camp out this evening. These are under prompt 1. It says the candidate will conduct a literature review with bibliography reflecting various teacher empowerment and leadership best practices. And these are the areas to be addressed. Now, if you notice, there are 5 areas. The first one being, and your heading would be building efficacy and empowerment among teachers and staff. Now, and the information that I just showed you back there with the APTEL templated materials, that first document that I showed you will align itself with what we're talking about here. First of all, and you were introduced to this concept in the APSL, but you've got to talk about, again, what is teacher efficacy? And remember that teacher efficacy is when a teacher believes in their own ability to guide their students to success. They love what they do. They love coming to school every day. They're the ones that those teachers, and all of you should be those teachers, the ones that you're actively involved in all the good things that are happening at your school. You just enjoy what you do every day, and it's evidenced in your teaching, it's evidenced in your teaching, your teaching leadership, and it's evidenced when you are with your students, even when you're with your parents. You're the teacher that that everybody wants, Johnny, in your classroom because of the kind of teacher you are. And then, but you're going to do is not your opinion. What does the research say as a leader, as the principal of the school? What does the research say that your role is about building efficacy and empowerment amongst your teachers? And just very briefly, some of the things that when you do your research that you will find, it's going to talk about, as a leader, you're going to make teachers true stakeholders. Empowering them to take on leadership roles gives teachers a true stake in the school. One of the things you've got to learn to do as a leader, and this is hard for some people, is to build efficacy, you've got to learn how to praise teachers. You've got to learn how to insinuate the good things that are happening. It's not always dwelling on the negatives and the things that you're doing wrong. You've got to have a listening ear. You've got to learn how to listen to teachers. That's important. They really don't care. The old cliche or the old saying is, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. It's important that you know their children's names, or something about their children, where they're attending school, and you take the time that you stop in the hallway and you say, by the way, how's Johnny doing at Carolina this year? Or if there's been sickness in the family, you just stop briefly and you just say, I just wanted to ask you, how's your mom doing now? Those things mean a lot. That is part of building efficacy in the school. Let them know sometime that you understand how difficult their jobs are and what they're doing, and talk about it, and be willing to help them when things get difficult. And again, as Dr. Revis has presented so well this evening, provide them with useful professional development. Don't do something just for the sake of doing it. Let it have meaning, and when they do have staff development. But what you've got to do for this area, building efficacy and empowerment among staff, you're going to do a literature review on this, a brief literature review with a minimum of 3 references. Again, it's not your opinion. What does the research say? about you as an administrator building efficacy and empowered among staff. The second area is results-oriented professional development. Again, provide useful professional development. When you provide professional development to your staff, you know, it should be such that the results are you're going to be able to see the results, positive results from it. It should improve their teaching ability. And in the end result, what is it all about? It's about the students and student achievement. And as a result of the staff development that you're doing, then you should see the results in test scores and overall achievement improving in your school, closing those gaps amongst your students. So again, this is not your opinion. What does the research say that you as a leader should do as you are looking at providing results-oriented professional development for your teachers? 3 resources, a minimum of 3 resources there. Thirdly, the heading is recruitment, placement, and mentoring of teachers. It's your job as the principal of the school to find good teachers, to put them in the right places so that they are appropriately placed to make the biggest changes and the biggest differences in your school. And when they're not, it's your job to put them where they belong. And then if they're not doing what they're supposed to do, as Dr. Revis has pointed out, your job is to mentor them and to assign them other positive mentors that can help them improve in their teaching and to get better. You don't just hire them and put them there and then you forget about them. What does the research say about recruiting the best teachers, putting them where they belong, and then mentoring them along the way? Again, a minimum of 3 resources. Number 4, the topic is approaches to and for evaluation of school staff. What does the research say as the principal of the school, as the leader of the school? What does the research say are the best approaches for evaluating your staff for systemic improvement? You want to see overall improvement and you want it to continue. So what are the best practices out there? And the research, there's an article that is in your Aptell template and materials section that will lead you to some good research, and then there's some references there that will take you in other places as you're looking at what the research has to say about what you as a leader need to do here. Again, a minimum of 3 resources in that area as well. And finally, the topic is teacher leadership and decision making. Again, what does the research say about you as the leader of this school empowering teacher leadership and letting them be a part of the decision-making process? You know, it's not, you're over the school, but again, you've got to remember that you cannot do it by yourself, that you've got to empower them, and it's your job as the leader of that school to train them and to pull out those strengths in them and to help them grow as teachers. What does the research have to say? Again, a minimum of 3 references there. So this section is going to have 5 topics and a minimum of 15 references for these 5 topics that you've got to do for prompt number 1. Dr. Lamb, any comments on that before we move on?
Just a reminder to use Bulldog 1.
Right.
Remember, that's on your library tab in Blackboard. Make sure that you use Bulldog 1. No Google, no Bing, no Ask Fred or whatever it is. None of that stuff.
Right. Okay. Anything, Dr. Revis, from you on that?
Yes, I think you're talking from the helpful hints, but what I'm seeing on my screen is the template
Okay, you're seeing the template. I'm speaking, they have it on the helpful hints, but I'm showing them the template.
Okay.
Yes. I'm referring, I am looking at some of my notes. Well, I'm really not. I'm remembering from memory because I've done it so many times.
I hear you.
But anyway, and just remember for task one, there are 2 prompts. Prompt 1 is the research, the literature review. And then as we are moving down, this is prompt number 2. You're going to create 2 things that Dr. Lamb emphasized last night. You're going to create a checklist based on the research to aid in assessing current best practices in the school setting. And these are just 2 examples, and there's many more. Dr. Lamb pointed these out last night. Your checklist must come from a research reference and should not be candidate made due to validity and reliability concerns. And then examples of a checklist for empowerment as a school leader, research from Todd Whitaker. Again, this is the one that we've provided you in the template to use. Best practices for teacher empowerment and leadership. Teacher has input on professional development offerings at the school. Teacher plays a role in the development of school improvement plan, et cetera, et cetera. However, as Dr. Revis pointed out, if you go back and look at your teacher working condition survey, the most recent one, you will find a section embedded in the teacher working condition survey that asks these same questions. You can go back and you can pull from that because that is a research evidence-based document. It's research. So you can go back and pull that and you can use those same questions to format into a questionnaire that you use, a survey that you use to send out to your teachers. Those in South Carolina, you will find it embedded in your advanced ed report. You will find it in the Elliott or the South Carolina evaluation system. Your South Carolina evaluation system has a lot of stuff embedded in it. So those of you in South Carolina, you have that. And when you set it up, just remember that, and it doesn't have to have, there's 5 things here, 5 to 7, 8 items is all you need to send out to get your survey results from. You set it up so that you set it up in a professional looking document, and it should have a rubric response section on there as well. So, this is just an example of some of the things that you can ask and where it comes from, but your job is to set it up to look like a professional document or a survey document when you send it out. Example of a checklist for empowerment as classroom leader research comes from Marzano's 9, and this is, again, when you go into the classroom. Remember, Dr. Lamb pointed out last night that you're doing 2 things. You're surveying your role as a teacher leader in the school, the overall school, and then you're looking at what is actually happening in that classroom. As the leader of the school, when you go in, how do you know a teacher is doing effectively what they need to do? And Marzano 9 will help you to focus when you do those 15-minute walkthroughs. And you can use this to develop your checklist from. And again, these are the 9 areas. Your job would be to put this in some type of document, a checklist document, that so when you go around, that you have space to mark to the side what you see, a place for comments if you need to make comments, et cetera, et cetera. You can use this to do your walkthrough instrument with, or if your school already has a walkthrough instrument, then by all means, that's what I would use. Dr. Lamb, any comments on those 2 areas before we move on?
I'm gonna I just want to remind everybody, you're looking at classroom empowerment, classroom leadership, and you're looking at school-wide. Going back to Dr. Revis's presentation tonight, for staff development to be impactful, it has to be practiced, and it has to be ongoing coaching. So if you'll remember from last night, I talked about we want to identify our best teachers so that they can then start that school leadership, school-wide leadership trek, which starts with teaching other teachers. That's what we're trying to do in the APTEL. We're trying to figure out who's our best teachers, who's our not best teachers. And then we're going to put a staff development plan in place by using our best teachers, because they're there every day. They don't cost us anything. And they're going to provide the staff development, the ongoing PLC of support, the ongoing coaching, one-on-one coaching support. You can't bring in external people. You can't afford to bring people in that stay there every day, all day. But you've got people, you've got talent there on your faculty. You've just got to identify who can and who can't. You know, when I teach, when I teach assessment, you know, the first night or the first weekend for doctoral students, when I teach assessment, you know, I said, this is the optimum teacher evaluation system. I draw 2 boxes on the board: can, can't. We need to get teachers into those 2, and then we start having the ones who can help the ones who can't. That's how we start. But it all starts with an assessment of where we are. Who's our best teachers? Who's the best manipulator of the high yield strategies? We look at their EVOS scores, their growth. Who's making growth? Who's a good teacher in the classroom? Who's not a good teacher in the classroom? Let's use the ones who are good to help the others, and that starts them on that trek of Whitaker's first level of teacher leadership, school-wide, teaching other teachers. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to figure out what is right now. And I want to remind you again, you can't do enough walkthroughs to get a complete picture of your school. You're just getting 2 or 3 for the experience of it. You're going to get that data from your school administrative staff. They're going to tell you, because they're required to do walkthroughs every day. And then you're going to put your plan together. And your plan should reflect some whole group, some what did Dr. Revis call it? Sit and repeat, or sit and get. You got to have some of that, but you got to limit that. It can't be that can't be it. Whole group. I call it whole group. It can't all be whole group. And the amount of whole group is dependent upon what your data tells you. Then you got to do some PLC work, and how often we work on these strategies in PLCs. It, again, is what does our data tell us? Nobody ever uses non-linguistic representation. We better work on some of these best practices every week. One-on-one, we start with our beginners, and then we move into our weaker teachers. And you have to, and I'll teach you how to do it next semester. You have to unbalance your schedule to do that. And that's like shaking the foundations of the building to unbalance the schedule. What that means is, I see Amy and Stephanie on my screen right now. So Amy, let's say Amy's a 3rd grade teacher and Stephanie's a 3rd grade teacher. And Amy is a wizard teacher and Stephanie is like me. You know, she's lucky to find the building most days. We got to have Amy do one-on-one coaching with Stephanie. The problem is 3rd grade teachers, what do they always share? Common planning time. And so what do they do during planning? Sit and look at one another. 0 value. We have to unbalance the schedule where Amy and Stephanie's planning times don't match. So when Stephanie's teaching, what is Amy doing? She's in the room on her planning time watching her. And what is Stephanie doing on her planning time? She's in Amy's room watching her. Folks, it's just that simple. But we got to put them, first thing we got to do is sort them into the 2 piles to begin with. Who can and who can't. We have the ones who can help the one who can't. You cannot, as Dr. Revis said, you can't throw enough money at this. You can't throw enough money at this. You don't have enough money to hire this done. some company would come in and charge you millions of dollars to do this over the course of 2 school days. Can't be done. But you have those resources at your fingertip if you're a little bit creative with your master schedule. It can't be like we always did it, though. And so I have a lot of students who say when they're putting their professional development, professional growth plan together at the end in task 3, they say, well, we can't do this or that or the other because of the master schedule, because we all have plans to do it. You can if you want to. It's just a case of want to. But I know that certain things, we've always done it that way. Everybody in the same grade level has the same plan at the same time, same department in high school. But that's not written in stone anywhere. Nowhere is that written in stone. Nowhere. Now, back to advanced ed. I want to get this point, and I'm going to get off because I'm watching the time. Back to advanced ed and TWC. Those are given every 2 years. That's a federal mandate. Every 2 years. Because both of those are mandated. Every state must have since 1991 and No Child Left Behind, every state must have an initiative for teacher retention. And it's working condition surveys. Those are the state's initiatives for teacher retention. So they have to do it every 2 years. And so that tells you why it's important. We talked about hiring good teachers, retaining teachers. We have to keep looking at that TWC. My coach for tomorrow night, or one of my two for tomorrow night, I'm so dumb. I have to have 2 coaches for my class. I have 2 coaches tomorrow night. Dr. Doug Massengill, let me find his right here. And he said when we were covering this last week in law, in our law class, he said that, I think he typed it in. I thought he might have texted it to me. He typed it in the comment section. That his superintendent, is he in Moore or Montgomery?
He's in Moore County.
He's in Moore County. He's middle school principal in Moore County. His principal has an entire section when his superintendent, when they do his evaluation, where they go over the TWC, all facets of it. Not only to look at the numbers, but he wants to know, how did you use this? How did this data inform what you did on a daily basis in your school this year? You have to tell me how you used this data. So you better get familiar with TWC and advanced ed, because it's going to be an everyday thing when you're a school administrator. So make sure that you find it. Now, Dr. Stedman, if you'll let me right quick share, I'm going to go back again and I'm going to be done. I've got it. Let's see if it'll let me share. You cannot share while up to sharing. Okay. So if you will make me the host right quick, Dr. Stedman, under this.
I'll stop share.
All right. I'm going to do share, screen, share. And here it is. All you have to do is North Carolina teacher working conditions and then survey results. Why are we not?
I could not get it to work this afternoon at all.
Well, now we got to make sure we see the state superintendent, that goober. I didn't say that. We got to make sure we see him.
Better behave yourself.
I know. I didn't say that. Got to make sure we see that. But this is where you go and get it.
We know how you voted today.
So I see that I had it popped up for me a few minutes ago as well. Let me see if I can go around the horn here and get to it. Nope, it's still not working. Normally you go in and there's 3 different symbols, as I showed you last night. You can look at statewide, you can look at for your district, you can look at your school. There's three different ways that it's represented. I choose the middle column. That has the numbers. It's the easiest for you to use. But you will actually copy and paste that when the website's back up working again. And so hopefully they'll get this going. So I will stop my share. and go back to you, Dr. Stedman. All right, those are the things that I wanted to make sure I hit tonight. We'll be on Thursday night, and I will talk to you. You have completed by then, hopefully, the app sale, or you've got, you're in the finals of that, and we will go over again how to upload some of those artifacts that you generated in your competency folder.
Dr. Lamb, and I was going to go a little bit further, but I don't need to. This gets you started on the AppTel. This is enough for you to know how to get started. Go ahead and look at the AppTel Helpful Hints. It explains it out step by step for you, and align it with the template and follow those directions. This will help you get started so that you're not spending all next week, just floundering and not having some constructive work to be working on. I would use my time wisely next week, and you can get a lot done. And then what we'll do when we come back after next week, our Tuesday night class, our main focus will be to go back on what we've done tonight. We'll go back and focus on that again, and then we will show you how everything that you're going to be doing with task 1, creating in task 1 and researching, you're actually going to implement it in task 2, and we'll talk about that after next week when we come back. Anything else, Dr. Lamb?
All right, Thursday night. I'll see y'all then.
Thursday
I'm
night
out.
at 7, guys. Okay. Bye, Dr. Revis. Good night, everybody.
Have a
Good
good
night.
evening.